you realize that when you get home, you're just like, how come nothing's changed? How come I don't feel any different? Well, did you put into practice? Did you put into practice what Jesus said? I've been honed in, following Jesus, going to church all the time, multiple services a week, serving, doing all the things, joined a small group, and I realized my relationship with Jesus feels no different. There was another group of disciples, and those are the people who are like, wow, there's a distinguishing between following Jesus and disciples of Jesus. And this is where we need to start recognizing that there is a difference in today's culture too. But when it comes to actually being a disciple, we don't know what that means, and we're actually unwilling to adapt our lives. Now let that sink in. Inputs directly affect your outputs. So it was about 4:20 in the morning, and I looked at my clock, and I was like, you know what? It's time. It really is time. And so I went downstairs miserably, made myself a cup of coffee, grabbed the keys, and then I headed out to my nice little 2000 Camry. And I hopped in the car, and I was like, I'm going to go to the gym. I decided today's the day. I'm kidding. I do this all the time. All right. I do it about 3 days a week where I wake up early, hop in my car and head to the gym. So it's no surprise. It's no new news. It's not like a big breaking, wow, Stephen woke up early and went to the gym. No, nothing like that. This is actually something that I do, and I put it into practice. Anyway, but this one particular morning, I've been dealing with a back issue. And so I decided, I'm like, I really need to go to the gym and I need to solve this problem. And actually, it hurts me a little bit now still too. So you'll see me squirm a little bit if you're watching on YouTube. For everyone else just listening on all of our other streaming platforms, you're just going to have to imagine me just like squirming in my chair. So I get to the gym and I walk in and I look for the semi-comfortable chairs to sit in. And the personal trainer is there getting ready to give me the lowdown on the back stuff. And actually a couple other people are there joining us. And so I'm sitting there in my chair, somewhat comfortable. I got my coffee and I'm watching them and they're talking all about the back, the muscles, the origin story to how people discovered that we can like work out our back and with certain ways and stretches and chiropractors and these machines and different natural body ways to do it. And it goes on for about 30, 40 minutes and it's really good, full of information that could be very healing to me and my back. So then the person's all done, and then I just stand up out of my cozy chair, and I start walking out, and I see one of my friends, and so I say, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? And I shoot the breeze with them, and then I was like, okay, well, I got to get going on with my day. I got things to do, got places to be, got things to see, everything in between. So I head out, hop in my car, and I go ahead and head home. Later that day, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, how come my back still feels a little funny? I thought I learned some really good stuff this morning about how to like heal my back and things that are going to like happen to make me like feel better. And so when I sat there and it was like a really beautiful moment, I was like, you know what? Learning about how to heal my back is very different than actually like putting into practice all the things I learned to actually make my back feel better. So if you're smart, you caught this analogy right away. If you're not so smart, you just realize this was an analogy. And do you know what it is an analogy for? Yes, you've guessed it. Going to church. You see, too many of us, we just go to church. We look at our clocks early in the morning. We're like, should I go? Should I not? And you're like, I should go. It'll be good for me. And then you're like, I got this thing that's been bugging me, either spiritually, relationally, or it's somebody else. You got something always bugging you in life. You're like, maybe if I go, I'll learn about it. I'll learn the origin story about where it came from, some really good techniques about how to pray or that Jesus takes care of you or something else. And like, I'll feel really good. I'll sit in my somewhat comfortable chair. I'll have my cup of coffee and I'll maybe see my friend on the way out or something like that. And then I can move on with my day and go to Waterworld or go and hike or go on an adventure, go shopping, go out to eat brunch. I got my things, the places to be, things to see, everything in between. And so do you see how similar those two stories are? And no, I did not actually do this. It was 100% an analogy. I do, however, wake up at 4:20, 4:30, 3 days a week to go to the gym and work out. I do that. But I do not go and I do not sit and consume how to work out and how to feel better and then not do anything about it. So like today was actually like arm day and I did actually some back. I got some back exercises in there to help strengthen my back and loosen it up and stretch out my muscles. So I put it into practice and I think I did a really good job because it's actually been feeling quite good today. So pat myself on the back for that one. But think about your life. Think about the way that you do church. Think about the way that you view church. How many times do you just show up? Do you look at your, what's a good word to say this? Look at your view of church and you're just like, yo, I'm going to get myself out of bed. I'm going to say we should probably go. So maybe you get the kids, you get the family, or you're just a single person. You're like, I'm going to go to church. And you go there, you sit down in your somewhat cozy chair, grab your coffee, and you watch someone talk about all about your life. And you're like, that was ailing me, this thing that the preacher or teacher talked about today. You know what? I feel a lot better about myself. Then you get up and you leave. I think I just said this a little bit, but follow on with me. And you realize that when you get home, you're just like, how come nothing's changed? How come I don't feel any different? Well, did you put into practice? Did you put into practice what Jesus said? And that is the question of today's episode is, did you put it into practice? See, I can go to the gym and I can learn all about the back and how to exercise my back, how to stretch it out, how to roll it, how to strengthen it. If I don't do any of that, I'm just going to keep getting a withering, or it's never going to get better. It's going to stay stagnant. And oftentimes it's just going to get worse, the problem that I got going on in my life with my back. Same thing when it comes to you. It's like, why would you go to church and just learn about everything that it's just like, hey, this is what Jesus has to offer. This is the relationship you can have with him. You can learn so much about him. But then if you never put it into practice, why are you yelling at the church that it's like, oh, nothing ever came of it? You know, like, or maybe you're just like, I have a problem with God because God doesn't care about me because I'm still dealing with this problem, but I don't actually put into practice anything that he ever teaches me. You know, I hope this does like really ring a bell and maybe tickle some feathers or irritate a few of you, because if this is your view of church, then I'm glad you're listening, because this is not church, like church. You know, like when I say the word church, you can be a small group of people or you could be a big, large mega church. I don't care. You know, the church is just the group of believers coming together. And so you figure out where you fit in the spectrum. Are you showing up and are you expecting to just be fed something that has to, and then just move on from there and then expect your life to be different? See, this is something I walked for several years. What I reached probably about, it was probably a 3-year span. I got to a point in my life where I'm like, I've been like honed in, following Jesus, going to church all the time, multiple services a week, serving, doing all the things, joined a small group. And I realized that I'm like, how come my relationship with Jesus feels no different? And it is because I was not putting into practice or learning what to into practice. I was just learning more about God. I'm like, wow, that is more evidence for God, more evidence for God. That is like Jesus. That is like he's teaching us how to like be serving and be generous. But no one ever taught like the reason why we do those things is because Jesus said, if you want to like be my disciple, like be my disciple, you know, spend time with me and then become like me and then do as I did. You know, that's the simple like that's simple discipleship right there. Actually, this book right over here is called Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. 100% great if you want to get started on a discipleship journey, you know? And that's like, you don't want to just follow Jesus anymore. You actually want to be like, what is it like? What does it mean to be like, be a disciple? Like, start putting it into practice. Grab this book. If you really want to be a great dad and learn how to leave a legacy to your kids, grab that book over there. It's called Reviving Fatherhood. It's my book. Personal plug there. But anyway, I'm reading through Mark. When I got to Mark 3, I was reading this one sentence. I forget the whole story, but because I was so taken back by this. In one sentence, there were 2 different words that were used that I thought were just really phenomenal. We had the word follow and the word disciple, and they were used to like recognize different people. And so it really said like the crowds were like following him, and there was all these followers of Jesus that were, this is the time when he was like healing people, casting out demons, and so like people were drawn to him in droves and followers. And then there was another group of disciples, and those are the people who are like, wow, there's a distinguishing between following Jesus and disciples of Jesus. And this is where we need to start like recognizing that there is a difference in today's culture too. I believe that you see this online. It's like, hey, it's like the Jesus revolution, the Jesus generation. You know, there's like a lot of this like profound, like Jesus is really like being talked about and coming back. But I'm like, that's really good. I love it because Jesus is the light in the dark, and I think that's why he's shining so bright. The problem that I am starting to wonder if it exists, and perhaps some of you do know, and actually it's a big reason for my next book called Closing the Gap. I'm going from knowing to like following, is like we can be so obsessed like these crowds were and follow Jesus because there's something exciting about him. There's something exciting and you can feel it in the air. But when it comes to actually like being a disciple, We don't know what that means, and we're actually unwilling to adapt our lives. Now let that sink in. You can fill up a stadium with a bunch of followers of Jesus. Because Jesus did it himself when he was here. He was there and he filled up a stadium worth of people who wanted healing, who wanted miracles. Pick any Christian concert, like you could fill up a venue. Pick anyone today, like Forrest Frank, Josiah Queen, like Brandon Lake, Phil Wickham, any of those people, they'll fill up a stadium, a bunch of followers of Jesus, and there's usually some part of just like where there's praying for miracles and healing, all great things. I love it. This is very similar to the Mark story that stood out to me. And I was like, holy crap, you know? And then look at those two crowds following Jesus who are just like, wow, like you could feel something different about this guy and you want to follow him. You want to be around it. But then realize that there's a secondary word that is used there. It's called disciple. Who is a disciple and what is a disciple? Is it someone who just shows up to the gym or shows up to church and just consumes and learns and then moves on with their life? Or is it somebody who actually shows up to the gym and starts working out what they learned? It's like I go to the gym and I learn about how to heal my back and stretch it out, and I actually go to the turf grass area and I start stretching it out and rolling it out. Then I go over to the weight machines or a free body area and I start like doing all the twists and turns and ups and downs and pulls and everything in between to actually start the healing. And so that is like, I took what I learned and I started putting it into practice. Is it perfect? No, I probably look like a dead rat spinning around doing something stupid. And the personal trainer guy's probably looking at me like, what is this fool doing? Like, ooh, you know what? I don't care what he thinks because I'm putting it into practice. I'm tired of my back being stiff and sore. So I'm going to attack it with what I learned. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And then eventually it's just like the pain's going to go away. And so far the pain has been actually getting better and better and better. So think about church. Think about following Jesus. Are you showing up just to be like, wow, I know so much more now? Or, wow, that was such a great experience being around all these Jesus people, whether it was a conference, whether it was a Christian music venue. Will you pick it? Like, did you enjoy going there and learning something, feeling the energy in the room? But now maybe that for you, that was like a couple years ago. And now you're a couple years into this and you're just like, how come following Jesus feels no different now? I used to be the biggest sold out Phil Wickham fan ever, or I was the biggest Brandon Lake guy ever, or girl. And, I went to every Christian concert ever. And I used to follow this pastor and that pastor, but like my life feels no different than it did 2 years ago. My question to you is, if that is you, like it was me, have you started putting into practice following Jesus? Have you started practicing what Jesus says to practice? And like you can go and pick any episode in this podcast that I have. We talk about prayer, we talk about reading your Bible, we talk about generosity, we talk about everything in between, silence and solitude, about all these different ways that you can practice following Jesus. And the thing is, you're not on your own. You have the Holy Spirit inside you to help you do it. But in order for my back to get better, I got to keep putting into practice what I learned to heal my back. In order for my spiritual life to grow, I got to put into practice what I learned. If I'm going to build muscle at the gym, I'm going to start working out. I'm going to tear my muscles. I'm going to put myself in an uncomfortable situation, and I'm going to actually like do it even though I look the fool. you know? And so for you, are you going to actually do it even though you look the fool? Are you going to do you care about the judgment from your friends about like, yo, why are you going to go be generous to that person? Or why do you care about like saying no, like come hang out with our friends? You just want to be alone? And it's just like, no, I want to spend some time with Jesus. And Jesus says to slow my life down. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to spend some time with him. And now you're going to start developing, wow, I see God pretty much everywhere I go now. Like I'm going to learn how to like pray. And I'm going to spend time in prayer like daily and talking to God. And I'm going to stop like running around like crazy, or, you fill in the blank. I'm going to stop going to church just to sit down in a chair and learn about God. And I'm actually going to show up and be like, who needs me to pray for them today? You might not pray for them out loud. You might just see them in front of you and you might just pray for them. You might spend the whole time praying for them. I do this. It's like I will go into church and, I feel like the Holy Spirit can just talk to you about people, and you can just see people. You have no idea what's going on about them, but something like in your heart moves for them. And so I show up to church often like this. I like to kind of sit near the back and I just like kind of look around the room, and then somebody will just catch my eye. And then I'll just be like, God, you know what that person's going through? You know what's going on? It could be a joyous time. It could be a grievous time. I don't know, but just be with them. And I just start praying for them, and then there's probably like a really good Christian way of going over there and shaking their hand afterwards and actually getting to know them, all that stuff, but I'm just like, I just don't have the bandwidth in this time of my life to do that. But, like, that's what I do now. There was a one time where I was in a small group, like, 8 years ago, and I always showed up to the small group, and I barely, like, contributed, and I was like, "I don't know if the small group's good for me, I'm not getting anything out of it," but then that was, like that's kind of the point of, like, you're not gonna get anything like, your inputs directly affect your outputs. I'm not gonna get anything out of the group if I'm not putting anything in. I always got a little bit out of the group because I was always putting a little bit in, and I was just like, "Huh," There was a campus pastor several years ago that I remember, like, listening to him, and he's the one who kind of rocked my world where this being started, like, this stagnant journey that I was in and, like, being like, "Hey, the reason why you're stagnant is blah, blah, blah." So I'm sitting there and he's just like, "If you wanna get involved, I'm not gonna hold your hand. You're a grown ass adult." He didn't say ass, I did. "And you're gonna get involved, You're gonna join that group, you're gonna join that serving team, you're gonna do this. I don't need to hold your hand. You're not a baby." And I was like, "Holy smokes, you're right. I am not a baby. Let me go ahead and do this." And that changed the trajectory of like, wow, the Christian life to grow takes an intent. Like, you can't just learn all the things. You have to intentionally apply it. You have to pull up your bootstraps, pull up your pants, and just be a grown ass person and go do it. You got to go put it into practice. You might not even know where to begin. AKA, grab this book, read your Bible, read through the Gospels, and just learn one thing. Maybe just it's how to pray, or maybe it's just starting with reading your Bible. You have to start somewhere and you have to make it a habit and you have to do it intentionally. So here's the thing. When you like take a progress picture at the gym, you're just like, "Wow, I look so fat today." Or you're like, "I just don't really look like I have much muscle." Or like, "I just like look bleh." However it is for you. But then you work out really routinely, maybe 3, 5 days a week. Do that for a year, you take a picture next year, you're just like, wow, you probably gained or lost weight depending on like gained muscle or whatever. But either way, you're gonna look at your body and be like, wow, I actually look like someone who's been crafting discipline into their life with like muscular discipline. I look way better than I did last year, and I feel healthier too. Think about that now with spiritual disciplines. You don't just show up anymore consuming a message. You don't show up anymore just consuming what's there. You actually put it into practice. And that's the kicker is like you'll look back in a year, be like, "Oh my gosh, like my life is so different. I don't deal with that issue anymore." Or if I do, it's not nearly as bad. Or this thing in my life got completely healed, or like, wow, I look different as a person because I am so much more patient. I'm so much more kind. I reflect Jesus and his grace to the people around me. And do you notice how both of those required like intentional discipline and you don't see the effects for a long time? So that's just where like you will know if you're going to the gym and not working out because you won't see results in a year. You can go to church and not like be a disciple because you won't see any results in a year. So if you're not seeing the outputs, look at your inputs because your inputs determine your outputs. And don't put this in like a weird legalistic way. It's like, but that's everything in life requires you to put something in. And the great, I say the great, but was it Dr. Andrew Huberman or whatever? He said one of the most dangerous things for you are things that then actually these will actually destroy you too, is if you get the dopamine without doing anything hard. And I'm like, what does this quote have to do with discipleship? It's just like you can't get like if you get the dopamine fix of like, wow, I look so good without doing anything hard, it's just like it's going to be really destructive because you're using something that's going to destroy you. Because apparently the body is designed to go through this process of transformation, which is always hard. And then you kind of get that dopamine hit. So, what's the whole point about this? We'll talk about that in a different podcast. But what's the whole point of that? Working out is hard. Spiritual disciplines are hard. Putting them into practice is hard. But eventually, there's going to be a point where you look back and you're going to get that dopamine hit of, oh my goodness, like, whoa, like, because something's going to come from it. But it's going to be after a long, grueling time. And it's not going to destroy you because it's not instant and it requires a lot of hard work. That's the tie in there. Like that. Hey. So what is that for you when it comes to your life, whether it's serving, whether it's your small groups, whether it's your church, and no matter which spectrum of church it is, like your small little church to a big mega church, like where is that for you? Where are you just consuming knowledge? Are you just following? Are you showing up and then leaving and not putting into practice and expecting results? Are you expecting something different? And that is the challenge that I have for you today is evaluate that in your life and see where you can change things. Where can you show up to church and be like, okay, before I leave, I'm going to actually work out. Or, okay, great. This is my study time. Now I'm going to go work out throughout the rest of the week. I'm not saying you have to do it all at church. Don't get me wrong there. But I am saying you do have to do it. It's like I leave the gym and it's like I go for a walk. It's like I don't do the cardio in the gym, I do the cardio outside the gym. So do the math for you. Do the math in your life. If you're a dad, if you're a mom, if you're busy, if you're not busy, find the time, craft it out, make a plan, and then intentionally start executing. But don't hide about the excuses anymore. They're not going to be good for you. You're going to get nowhere in life. So yeah. Anywho, this all has to also do with, if you're not following along, you can go to my social media, stephenkolberg.official on Instagram. It's the only place I'm posting it right now because I very limited amount of time. But I'm posting through the journey of I'm writing my next book called Closing the Gap, going from knowing to actually following. And how do you close this discipleship gap? It's kind of like what we talked about today, but what I talked about today, I'm actually probably not going to really include in the book. But it's really just like, hey, like there's this aspect of so many people who claim to follow Jesus, but actually aren't following Jesus. Like that Mark 3 verse. It's like the crowds are following him, but there's only a few disciples. And I want everybody to be on the disciple side, and not just on the following side. But yes, is it a sacrifice? And a lot of people going to type out? I think so. It's not easy. Unfortunately, people are going to run into those walls of not easy and they're going to quit. So if you know somebody in your life and you made it this far in my podcast, encourage them not to quit. For you watching it this far, don't quit just because it's hard. And if that stands out to you, just message me and let me know that that's all you needed for today is to not quit and to keep going. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Revive podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you put into practice following Jesus. So thanks for joining us today. Cheers.